Love it or hate it, it's the rematch we all probably expected. You thought Michigan may be here, no?
No.
You thought this is what it was going to be.
I'd never said that.
Okay.
Maybe
I
I
just like
did,
to put
but
words in. Yeah, there you
I
go.
did.
Alabama, Georgia, just 37 days after they met in the SEC championship game when Alabama took down the number one team of the nation. Well, this time Georgia looking for a different outcome and its first national championship in 41 years. Taking a look at a couple bullet points from game preview there. Crimson Tide, by the way, have now been involved in more than half of the college football playoff games played, 13 to 24 to be exact. But despite that, and despite Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship, it's the Bulldogs who are favored in this one as of now by 3. So how does Nick Saban feel about that?
You know, being an underdog is being an underdog. They have a really good team that's very well respected. We have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And I think, you know, it's important for our players to know what they need to do to be able to continue to have success in the next game, regardless of what happened in the last game, and regardless who was favored and who was underdogs and all that kind of stuff. You know, everybody has pride in performance. Everybody wants to go play well, and we certainly want to do everything as coaches that we can to help our players go out and play well and compete well in a game.
1 week away from the national championship, let's welcome in college football writer, one of the voices you hear on the Cover 3 podcast, Barrett Sallee there. Maybe being an underdog is delicious rat poison to Nick Saban yet again, going up against Kirby Smart, the second time these guys are meeting in just 37 days, Barrett. When it comes to these two coaches meeting yet again, give us your preview of that.
Yeah, you know, I think when it comes to Kirby Smart, you have to wonder how he approaches this, because I'm a firm believer that he got way too cute with his defense going into that game from last month. So does he try to get more creative, or does he try to keep it simple? I think for Kirby, the question here is, do you overcoach? Does he overcoach? And is that the right move? So I think there's the monkey on his back. Everybody knows it. But the truth of the matter is, it's really hard to beat Nick Saban. When you have the best players and you have the best coaching staff, you're going to lose a lot. And Kirby Smart has done a great job building that talent. He's got a great staff, obviously, there in Athens, but it's not Alabama. And I think we all know that. So, and for Nick Saban and for Alabama, I think he's going to have to try to get his team back down to earth, right? Because against Georgia last month, that was the first real complete game they played all year long. And then they go and they basically throttle Cincinnati with a rushing attack, which is something we hadn't seen all that much. So I think it's imperative that Nick Saban gets his team to recognize, hey guys, look, the last 2 games, you've been awesome, but your DNA prior to that wasn't very healthy. So this is going to be a tough challenge for him. There's no doubt.
I think one of my favorite quotes from Kirby Smart when it came to after their win against Michigan, he said that Nick Saban had a 5 or 6 hour head start after beating Cincinnati, and he wasn't interested in celebrating. He needs that 5 or 6 hours back that Nick Saban has. So how does Georgia, they have lost 7 straight to Alabama. How do they get over this hump?
Well, it's to fix the strength. The strength of that team is the defensive front, and it didn't show up against Alabama. And it really is that simple. You know, I think over the course of the next week, people are going to dissect this in a bunch of different ways. But the reason Georgia has been so successful and the reason it made the college football playoff was Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, all those guys, Nakobe Dean. And so I think what they have to figure out is look at the tape, figure out why that pressure didn't get to Bryce Young, because they actually stopped the run pretty well. But obviously, Bryce Young on the run was money. The pocket was relatively clean, or at least cleaner than it has been in Alabama games prior. So I think what they have to figure out is not only how do they get that pressure, but how do they get that pressure to land? How do they get it to get home? Because you go back and watch the Cincinnati game for Alabama, and I was there. It wasn't like Bryce Young was comfortable. Now, he didn't get sacked all that much, but a lot of times he was one read and bail. He was not comfortable at all. So for Georgia, it's all about figuring out what went wrong. How do you make things simple? How do you keep it simplified? And at that point, does that pressure get home? If it does, then Georgia's going to win the game.
Really quickly before the next question, should Georgia be the favorite here?
Oh, man. Yeah. No, it shouldn't. And I think the public, I think, was surprised at that. And I honestly was too, because generally speaking, you're going to get more money on the team that that has done this before. So yeah, I was surprised. I understand, I guess, why odds makers would put it that way, because I think that there's a justifiable reason to believe that Georgia's going to fix things. But I was surprised honestly, I was surprised it wasn't a pick 'em. I just figured that Vegas would be like, all right, you bettors sort this out, because we don't even know at this point.
All right, so all season up until the very end, we were sort of saying, look, it's Georgia and everyone else, and then along comes Alabama yet again. They have won 7 straight against Georgia. If they win this game, how much distance will that create, not just between Alabama and Georgia, but Alabama and the rest of the country?
I don't think it'll create that much distance. I mean, yeah, sure, a little bit more, because Alabama, obviously, their biggest threat in the SEC is Georgia, and you could argue their biggest threat over the last few years actually has been Georgia alongside Clemson. But I don't think the gap will change. I mean, look, I don't, just because Georgia loses to Alabama in this scenario doesn't mean Georgia's not talented, doesn't mean Georgia's not deep, and it doesn't mean that the resources are going to suddenly disappear. So the gap at this point clearly is the hunter versus the hunted. I think Georgia is relatively close. The coaching staff is the difference. Nick Saban and his crew have figured out how to have success at an elite level despite coaching turnover. Kirby Smart really hasn't yet. That's still the narrative now, and I don't think that would change if Alabama beats Georgia once again.
See, and we were just all upset that we were going to get this rematch, and you just made us very excited for it, Barrett. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you a lot over the course of the next week as we inch closer to that national championship a week from today. Barrett, thank you so much. You can hear more from Barrett and all of our guys when it comes to college football on the Cover 3 podcast. Chris, you and I agreed the playoff games were terrible, but there were really good bowl games over the weekend.
Pretty good. Yeah, the Rose Bowl was great. The Citrus Bowl wasn't bad, but my Hawkeyes lost.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I hope you
How about that? The bowl game's better than the playoff.
Ah, maybe we'll talk to Dan Cannell about that. Make sure to download and follow Cover 3 Pod. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.